For more on all of this, we go to John Sitilides, geopolitical strategist at Trilogy Advisors. Gosh, a lot to talk about tonight, John. Thanks for joining us. How do you think the president's economic view of the world is going to be received at Davos? How is this going to play over?
I think he's got two audiences in Davos, Ed. Government leaders may be somewhat circumspect about the way they're going to be establishing their relationship with President Trump. Remember, for many of them, this is the first time they're meeting him, and they're thinking very much how this is going to be playing out through the media in their respective countries. I think privately, though, there'll be some very good conversations about where they can work together to advance common interests and common objectives in their parts of the world or globally. I think the business executives will be far more receiving of President Trump. They've become far wealthier under the past year of Trump administration policies, whether it's tax reform or whether it's deregulation. And I think they're probably looking for additional business and investment opportunities in the U.S. market.
This is a real opportunity for these folks who move the money on this globe to go to the president directly and say, are you headed for a trade war? What do you mean? What are you doing with China? How much protectionism are you going to give American industry? What about that?
I think one of the things that President Trump is going to have to more effectively underline is what Gary Cohn said, that America first does not mean America alone. The U.S. is going to engage in very robust trade agreements with various countries around the world, both those that it's already in agreements with and those that it's going to revisit agreements with, such as NAFTA, involving Canada and Mexico. What President Trump, I think, is making very clear is he's not going to go for this veneer, if not outright falsehood from China, for instance, that they're pursuing open trade and globalization, when in fact they've closed off most of the Chinese economy to foreign direct investment or forced the turnover of IP rights to Chinese companies. So in those areas where U.S. companies are going to be at a decided disadvantage, that game is over under the Trump trade policy.
All right, let's talk about aid to the Palestinians. This seems to be a pretty heavy-handed tactic by the president to try to get peace talks going and to get a settlement. Is it a dangerous tactic? It's a ploy that I've never heard before by a U.S. president.
Well, first of all, let's keep in mind that I think any policy involving the Israelis and the Palestinians coming out of the Trump White House probably has been vetted in the past several months with Saudi Arabia and other major Sunni countries in the Middle East. These are now in many ways Israel's best allies because their shared concern is not about the future of the Palestinian Authority or a hopeful Palestinian state. It's how they constrain and check Iranian influence throughout the Middle East. So I think they're all looking to see if there's a way forward on the Israeli-Palestinian issue to begin to marginalize that matter among their own citizens in various Sunni countries. And frankly, there's really been no serious movement on the Israeli-Palestinian issue since President Clinton made a last-ditch effort in 2000 to give the Palestinians essentially 90 to 95% of what they were choosing or hoping to achieve, and Yasser Arafat rejected it. And there's really been no movement under Mr. Abbas.
Well, there has been a lot of aid every year coming from the federal government of the United States, and now it sounds like an ultimatum from the President of the United States. Will this invoke violence at some level?
If it invokes violence, it'll likely be directed by the authorities in Palestine. These things never really take off on their own, Ed. And look, we've all known for the last 13 months now that President Trump makes very clear he sees these relationships in much more transactional contexts. And so it's very clear the United States doesn't actually owe the Palestinians a single dollar. Anything that's given is given with the hope that they'll work as constructive partners with the Israelis, who are also major aid recipients, to try to produce a peace for both the Israeli and the Palestinian people. But if the Palestinians don't earn it, why should they receive another dollar?
John Sitilides, always a pleasure. Nice to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.
Good to be with you. Thanks.